so it was kind of an audiobook. So I that might be another way of experiencing it, and might be a little closer to the film. I've been doing a lot of audiobooks lately because when I was a Shirley Jackson Award juror, I needed to optimize my time, and that meant that I could, while walking the dog and driving the car, I could still be reading books. So I went from someone who didn't do a lot of audiobooks now to like pretty audiobook, loving it, most of them. Some of them, the readers aren't as good as others.
Now it sounds like maybe because of your parents that you mentioned, were you introduced to foreign books at an early age?
Well, my mother's from Finland.
Right.
So my mother was not a science fiction fan, to be clear. My mother was from Finland, but she spoke like Swedish, French, German, and English. So and could like pass in some other languages as well. So I'd say my first translated books were the Moomin books, which are definitely qualify as weird fiction. Not necessarily horror, although in one of them a comet is coming to Earth and there's a haunted hobgoblin hat and everything. I don't know, does anyone know Moomins? Oh, look them up. And if you're into anime, there's an anime movement, but the original books are very strange and wonderful, marketed to children, but adults can enjoy them very much, and I highly recommend them. They're the best quirky children's books that you will find. So that would be my first, I think, my introduction. That and Pippi Longstocking, probably.
I did grow up on the movies,
Yeah.
so but I didn't read any of the books. But those were very much adventurous.
Yeah, well, Pippi was definitely a sort of, I don't know, she's as adventuresome as an Edgar Rice Burroughs book, but kind of quirky, and you could pretend she was your friend, and it could be kind of real. But that's by a Swedish author, Astrid Lindgren. So there are so, once you open your mind up to reading books from other cultures, the Moomin books, unfortunately, weren't available widely in the United States as a child. When I was a child, and so we read British editions, and only in recent years, you can now get them fairly easily now here, and they are published in the U.S. And there's lots of merchandise, so be forewarned.
Once you get in.
And you're going to love the art. And Tove Jansson, the author, just did a lot of the art herself. You're just going to love it. I should have brought a Moomin book. Do you want to ask me another question?
I can. Or does anybody, like I said, if anybody has any questions during this, feel free to, let us know. But do you, is there a significant book that you first read that was a foreign book that was featuring a monster that was pretty incredible? And
well, I mean, the Moomin books have the Grok, who might be a monster, and the Hadi Fatmers. But the Grok is sort of a melancholic figure, so you might decide the Grok isn't really a monster. The Grok is the kind of monster that you kind of empathize with. If I knew the Grok, you kind of feel sad for her. She doesn't necessarily mean to be a monster. But I'm trying to think what would be the early ones that I would have read or foreign stories.
Some of the best
Here's the Grok. I don't know if you can see the Grok from here.
That's huge.
Yeah, huge and really.
Because I know that certainly my experience with being into vampires in fiction and in especially in movies, I mean, the legends of vampires are different depending on what country you're in.
Yes, but I mean, I'm definitely into vampirism through Dark Shadows and through Bram Stoker.
Sure, yeah, that's right.
And then eventually Anne Rice and so forth. What am I?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read a translated vampire story or novel, which I'm sure they exist.
Oh yeah, well, John Lindquist let the right one in.
Carmilla.
Yeah, and Carmilla, of course. Yes, Carmilla's the obvious one. Should have said first, but I'm looking up something here, so that would be something to talk about.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think I've never read Carmilla.
I have read Camilla, but it's been a while.
Is that French?
I think it is. It's, there's a movie with a cat on the poster. Because like Dracula changes into the different animals,
Oh,
and
right,
that
right.
kind of vampirism.
Gotcha.
She changes into the different forms.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm much more familiar with movies when it comes to the foreign, especially the vampires, because there's a lot of different ones. The Japanese ones bounce around. It was just weird. It always throws me off. They're hopping around, and that always struck me as a very odd thing. That kind of took some of the sting of the horror out of it to me.
So I would say that probably immediately the form is a story that Diary of a Madman, Vincent Price,
Okay.
based on the Orla by Guy de Maupassant, would be a very obvious example of a foreign story, a French story turned into a film. That's 1963. I was just looking up the details on it. Have you seen Diary of a Madman?
I've seen the movie.
Yeah, you've seen it.
Mhm.
That's where the hands,
Yes.
I don't want to say too much if you haven't seen it, but it's one of the true horror classics of the 1960s, Vincent Price in Diary of a Madman. And then you should read the Orla, Horla, the story by Guy de Maupassant, which is a fairly short story. So, it's very powerful. And if you lose control of your hands,
Yes.
it's a very, very effective foreign or French story that.
I do know that the original story that Hitchcock's The Birds is based on is a French story.
Oh yes, you are correct on that.
And but I've never read it. And the same thing with Planet of the Apes. That movie
Yes.
is based on a. Is that the same author?
Pierre Boulle, it's Pierre Boulle, Boulle.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same author, but it's they're both based on French stories, short stories.
The Birds.
And of course the movie was that was adapted by Rod Serling.
So yeah, it's Daphne du Maurier.
Yeah.
My head is not it's not
Okay.
totally with it today, and I'm really sorry. But yeah, Daphne du Maurier, who's an amazing, also story of supernatural writer and ghost story writer. So yes, The Birds, of course, is Daphne du Maurier. I'm embarrassed that
That's okay.
Yeah.
You didn't know there was going to be a quiz, so that's okay.
Well, no, I usually prep for a panel. I mean, I really do. Not everybody preps for a panel, but I make notes and look things up and think about it. In fact, I love to get an email in advance that tells me what the questions might be, and then I really prep. So coming in cold and distracted is not my favorite way of doing a panel.
But it's appreciated nonetheless. Does anybody have any questions before we go with other material, like other stories or other examples that they know of? So I see you brought some.
Well, I was going to say that I can show you these genre books. These are the first two of the stories of genre that are being translated with details. These are from Wakefield Press. In fact, if you want to find a lot of horror in translation, Wakefield Press would be a place to start. They have a lot of authors from France and Belgium and Germany and so forth that you might not know, but these are, Cruise of Shadows is probably it's hard to say which is the best, but this one is probably got the most. If you are a Lovecraft fan or a Hodgson fan, you should read this. There's some very effective stories in here. I don't know if I should, oh gosh, including a vampire story and like a cult, a wonderful sort of demonic cult story on a cruise on a sort of a boat on the river, and the gloomy alley, which is, this kind of alley in a tent that you go down it and you're not quite in, you are suddenly in a different place. He does a lot of cosmic horror going into alternative worlds, not exactly the multiverse, but you can, instead of you enter a wardrobe, you go down this alley and you are suddenly in a different world and you can't maybe find your way out, but he does it in a very unique and interesting way.
And what time period are those?
These are written, Whiskey Tales was written before he went to prison, which he went to debtor prison for a while. So I think it was published in what year was it actually published? 25. They call it the Whiskey. And then Cruise of Shadows is written after, in 1931. He's an interesting character. He made up a lot of stories about his life, as it turns out. So I brought these just to show you, and then I also brought this one best collection for the Shirley Jackson, Gabriela Damian Miravete from Mexico, and her stories are really. If you're really into horror, I have to tell you these are a little bit more towards speculative, sort of weird fiction than outright scary horror, but really, really beautiful writing. And
what time period is that one from?
Last year, just won in 2023 this year.
Okay, wow, okay.
This was nominated for the short story collection. It's by a Nigerian author, and I must say some of the most exciting speculative written right now being written is by African authors. African authors have always had an interesting take on literature, but it feels like what's coming to us, at least, is the best of the best. So anytime you see something by an African author, you can take it.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
You went like this, and I'm like, I don't know what it was. Well, here.
Yeah. So this is a great one from a small press called Undertow, Jackal by Toby Ogunduran. And but he might have written it in English because he's from Nigeria, and so he may have been written originally in English. What I found was interesting about it, we talked about different writing. There's a story in here that really reminded me of what William Hopage's is like, it's on a ship. This kind of, I don't know how if you all read William Hopage's, but it was interesting. The Epic of Kushitu, and it was just really cool to read an African author sort of having a take on something that seemed very familiar if you read weird fiction and cosmic horror, but do it in a totally different way, or enough different that it was very fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some books I recommend. I just pulled off the bookshelf quickly today. Wakefield, another press that is doing a lot of translated work is Valancourt, Valancourt, and they do an anthology every few years of world science fiction, or not world, world horror, sorry, and it's always got really interesting and great stuff in it. So they do that, but they also are doing, they've done some Swedish authors, they've done some authors from Eastern Europe. They bring a lot of stuff back into print. So even if you're not wanting to find work in translation, you should go see them, because they bring back fabulous lurid books from like the 70s and 80s back into print. Things that came out with lurid covers and so forth, and then went out of print, and the best vampire novel ever, A Delicate Dependency by Michael Talbot. Maybe not the best ever, but a really amazing vampire novel. It was out of print for years and years. You had to pay like $65 to get the big fat purple paperback, but they brought it back and you can get an affordable edition. So Valancourt is great. And Wakefield Press books aren't that expensive either. Centipede Press does translations. They're doing a Guy de Maupassant as well, but they're much more expensive, you know. So having affordable editions, I think, is very important too.
How does Valancourt?
Valancourt. Yeah. The small presses are super exciting right now. That's where a lot of the action is, in terms of the best and most innovative writing. Because to get through New York Publishing, you go through all these different hurdles and a lot of editing, and sometimes the work isn't as fresh anymore.
And plus, I think most of them are trying to get, like, they're just going by what is selling and what's trendy rather than trying to put something new out, right? And risk that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the small presses are more likely to take risks. And thanks to print on demand, small presses can do it without printing a whole bunch of books that just sit in the warehouse. So this has really revolutionized the small press. And largely that happens outside of bookstores, because where are bookstores now? Other than Barnes & Noble, but it's really hard to find, and Barnes & Noble doesn't stock a lot of that. So the action is you have to come to a con, or, really, sort of figure out your algorithms in Goodreads to find out some good stuff to read.
So tell us about the translation process, like how that is determined and what goes into translating something from another language.
Well, I will tell you, my mother would translate books in Finnish. And Finnish is a very differently structured language to English. So I think that the biggest, one thing that translators, she would say, and that Scott also says, and others, is that the thing is that you want to convey what's on the page, but it can't necessarily be a direct translation because it won't sound right, it'll sound awkward. But you want to still maintain the feel of the original language. So it's tricky. So a really good translator puts a lot of effort into trying to maintain the cadence and the way that it would have been experienced if you read it in the original language, whether it's French or Finnish or German or Russian, Chinese, Spanish. You want to have, you want to convey the texture of the original work, but you also want to make sure that it's understandable and reachable. Scott does lots of, because with this French, it's old French. I mean, it's French, but and there are a lot of, it isn't that the language is necessarily as much different as there are a lot of references to stuff that you just wouldn't know if you weren't in Belgium or France in the 30s, 40s. So he does a lot of footnotes as well. And so I think that translators of older works, you may find that a good translator has put in a lot of footnotes. A lot of stuff is public domain, like I think the Guy de Maupassant is, and some of the translations are better than others. So because of that, if it's something that's public domain, you may not find, you may find some challenges in the translations being as crafted. So I'd say those are some of the things. And then there's just a lot of, you don't do one draft when you do a translation. You do it over and over until just like you write, if you're a good writer, a lot of it's in the revision and getting it to sound exactly right. But the goal is to have this, you read this and you're reading it, but the same way that someone reading it in French would read Jean Ray, you get the same feeling, even though it is in English.
Gotcha. You shouldn't even realize that you're reading something translated, right?
Yes, exactly. It should be that effortless, if you can do it. Mm-hmm. And I have done some translations, but I've not translated a book, so I cannot. But he also said I've had these conversations with translators.
I would imagine that, yeah, I mean, how fluent do you have to be in a language to be able to translate?
You have to be pretty fluent. I mean, I think now you have Google Translate, and a lot of people do run it through Google Translate. And that's how you get inferior translations. Because I'll tell you, I do Google Translate, you know, I know some Finnish to communicate with my mother. She now has Alzheimer's, so and I've learned really how bad Google Translator can be sometimes. So you can translate it. If you can't find a translated book, you can run it through yourself and get the gist, but you'll probably find it. The AI doesn't do it, not yet anyway. The AI is not doing it so well. And hopefully the AI, I don't know, could the AI do genre really well? I don't know. I think that there's a nuance to what a really good writer does, and that the AI will probably still miss something.
Sure.
So hopefully translators still are going to get work. Because that actually is probably and if we have a translator here, I bet that's a big concern.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't even talked about anything related to AI yet. That just opens up a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're here to have a debate about AI. I'm just saying that if you're thinking about translation, that might be something to watch out for. You know, you wouldn't see a translator's name on the book. And if you like something that's translated by one translator, they may have translated other books, and that might be an entree into other authors, because if you think they did a really good job on this book, then you can kind of follow a translator as well.
Mm-hmm. Do certain publishers stick with just translating certain languages in particular, or is it?
Some of them do, I think. I think that with Wakefield, I think that the publisher speaks certain languages so he can assess the translation, and it's a small press, so because Scott and I were talking about, you know, I asked him about doing some other work on what and he said that probably they're doing, I guess, French and German and the languages that the publisher knows. And that's with a small press, and where they have a lot of control. Obviously, I don't know, with New York presses, they can always find somebody.
Mm-hmm. Do you know much about the reverse process, about publishing or translating English to other foreign languages, and how that process happens as well? Or?
I imagine it's similar. I mean, I think translations, what's interesting, you might be interested, this is sort of a behind the scenes thing about translations, is there are two ways translations happen. One, say a book is really popular, and then a publisher will find this book and then go and find a translator. But my mother and Scott actually pitched, if you really love an author and you want to translate them, let's say you speak that language really well, and there's an author that you wish was in English, you as the translator can pitch it to publishers as well. And it's sort of, then the book comes with a translator, and that, so it goes both ways.
The perception from me anyway, and this might be incorrect, but is that a lot of other countries and people speak English a lot more often than we would speak any other language. So therefore, I don't know how much translating in other languages is necessary.
Well, it is in a lot of places, but yes, in Finland, people read English, so they're not going, there's probably not a large market necessarily. There might be a market for children's books, for example, in translation, but most people who read are probably reading English as well. I think that's probably true, but I don't think that's always as true necessarily in Spanish-speaking countries, of which there are so many. I mean, why would you need to? Because there's so many there's so much amazing literature happening in Spanish-speaking countries, including in comics, horror comics, and monster comics in Mexico. I mean, there's just tons that has never been translated here. I will say someone writing in English from Mexico, if you're not reading Sylvia Moreno Garcia, you should. She is suddenly become a best-selling author, and she's a really nice person, and yay for that. But if you haven't read Mexican Gothic, it's a really great novel. And if you love film, you should read Silver Nitrate, which is about a lost film and Nazis and all sorts of stuff. So.
Yeah, because I would imagine that it would be, and just vice versa too, but using this as an example, like translating Poe to other languages would be, to me, very, very difficult. Because
I'm
it's so,
sure
I mean,
that
you know,
is-
obviously the poem, you know, keeping that same rhythm.
And I'm sure Poe is translated.
Sure.
Poe is probably one of the, I mean, I can't say off the top, but I'd be very surprised if Poe isn't one of the most translated authors. I mean, also remember that there are people who are reading these books like in Russia, and I mean, all around the world there are readers. So there is a market definitely for translating books that are in English, because people, I think we think that people speak English everywhere, but they don't really. They do in I think, Europe. They do. When we say Europe, we're thinking of, you know, the countries that we know the most about. But as you begin to get into the South and the East and Central and Eastern Europe, you're going to find less English speakers.
Have you read Tender Isn't Flush yet?
No, but I need to read that.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Yeah, I was expecting it to be more dramatic from like the topic, and it was such a slow burn, and it was so good because it was that. It was like the opposite of House of Spirits,
Yeah.
which that's got something happening every page.
Yeah.
I love Tender Isn't Flush. But I haven't read House of Spirits yet.
Yeah, I read House of the Spirits.
Yeah, I recommended that for a workbook club, and then realized as I was rereading it, it's every trigger warning that you've ever needed in your life. And I was like, oh my god, I work at a college. You know, like they get very uptight about what we discussed. So that one was like really weird.
Now, sometimes it's sometimes challenging if you're part of a book club.
Yeah.
But
that
a
was,
foreign book is a sneaky way to get some horror in there. Sometimes I found, you know, or Mexican Gothic, we got that past the book club that I sometimes go to. But you have people who won't read horror because they think that, I don't know what they think horror is. I think they just think it's all splatter. But if you read, you know, there's a lot of really good literature that is classified as horror.
Well, just if it's got, like, if it's in another language, you know, and it's foreign, it seems like it's got that, like, sort of status where it's, oh, it's okay, it's, you know, I mean, it's
From
true.
South
of
America,
movies, too.
Latin America, it's like magic realism, not speculative literature. Sorry, it actually is speculative literature and could totally be on your science fiction, fantasy, and horror bookshelf.
and now I just got the diaspora because I'm reading Reclaim the Stars, and it's got like writers from the Spanish diaspora in it, and it's like sci-fi in the first part, and now we're back into the Mexican realism, like traditional characters and monsters and stuff, and then we're moving into something else that I haven't figured that out yet. But that one's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, Fire Cooper's Daughter and the sequel of that one that I really liked. They were Native American. They were,
who's the author of that?
I can't remember, but it was,
Oh, I'll remember the title, yeah.
it was very popular this year.
There's so many good Native American writers getting published. Tiffany Morris is one to watch. Her novella Green Peas Burning was nominated for the Shirley Jackson. And she's going to be, the Outer Dark podcast, we're sponsoring her to go to Necronomicon. So that they will have, they're doing really well. There are a number of Black women authors who are going to Necronomicon this year. It's not the same as, you know, when you think it's like it's the Lovecraft convention, you think, but it's really become something much more. So, but but not just, Stephen Graham Jones is sort of the elephant in the room, but Rebecca Roanhouse is getting a lot of attention, and Jessica John's Bad Creed, which my friend's daughter, who is Native American, said she felt was extremely authentic for her experience. And it's called Bad Creed by Jessica Johns. But that's, again, not a work in translation. It's a work written in English, but by an indigenous author. So good recommendation there.
So as we get ready to wrap up, we know we should follow you on Goodreads.
Yeah, sure.
Where else?
Trying to good at promoting myself. I don't know. I haven't.
Where else should people find it?
Oh, you can come to go to anyamartin.com. The Outer Dark podcast. We have not been doing a lot, but you can find lately. But if we're at theouterdark.com, you can find interviews with some of the authors that you should be reading, and panels, and a lot of content. At theouterdark.com. We also have theouterdark.org. You might end up there. We are trying to do a symposium again in Atlanta, which will be a small writers conference that is really about talking about writing and talking about ideas and talking about weird fiction. And people really love it, but it's hard to put on a convention, a conference and fund it, and we want to be able to bring in, we have a different model. We don't pay for guests of honor. We want to help emerging writers who can't afford to come. So it becomes very challenging, and airfares went up after COVID, and hotels went up, and so we hope to do that again. So you can kind of follow us. We have a group on Facebook. If you want to join the group on Facebook, just answer the questions so I know you're not a bot or someone's going to sell sunglasses or something. So just answer the questions and I'll let you in. Just say you came to my panel and then you heard me. So I encourage you to follow The Outer Dark. And I will be doing podcasts again. And just after Necronomicon, we're going to put on a lot of content, some really cool content. But any of the authors we've interviewed on there, any of that will introduce you to people you might enjoy reading.
Awesome. I hope people have got some good ideas for some recommended reads. And I guess we'll just leave with I've got prizes. I wish I had a nice book to give out, but I've got some we'll just say interesting viewing material here. So I guess we'll throw it out to you guys as far as, I don't know, you have a question for anybody? They want to answer? First one to answer? No? Nothing?
What?
For a question to give out to people for...
like a trivia question?
Or, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, my head's going to explode. I mean, on this topic. I could ask you to remember something that I said. So, what was the great, Bill, you can't answer. The great Vincent Price movie that is based on a story by Guido Maupassant that we mentioned during this panel. You didn't sit through the panel, so.
No. I was talking.
Can anyone remember the name of that? Or if you can't remember, can you remember the Guy de Maupassant story?
She's close. I'll take it.
Okay.
It's Diary of a Madman.
And it's the Orla is the story.
And you win a 3 Blu-ray collection of the Primeval. So, it has nothing whatsoever to do with this topic. I think it is in English. I don't think it's translated. But thank you. And thank you guys for attending panel 2 of day 1 of Monsterama. We appreciate it. That was fun. Thank you so much.
And I'm on panel tomorrow on what is
we
it?
need to talk about that actually.
Yeah, I don't even know what the topic is. It sounded a cool title. I'm going to bring some show in because it's about when monsters rule the bookshelves or something.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring some show and tell with some really great covers because I figured maybe that's it. I inherited a horror science fiction collection from my dad, and so I got some really cool paperbacks. So I'll bring you some show and tell for that. You can tell me what the actual premise. When did
I will tell you more about that.
you tell me about it? 'Cause I just said I
Right.
would do it, but I don't actually know what I'm.
Yes.
I'll try to be prepared, but I are overnight, right? So I won't be.
Thank you guys so much.
I don't know, this seems to be like we want.
Thanks. That
Okay,
worked
did you
out.
have a good time even though I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
remember?
Really great.
Someone take a picture of us.
Yeah. I figured that everybody was gonna be at other meetings. I really
Nobody
needed
reads
to.
international horror.
It's not like her, like, just telling everybody that Candy's in home hospice, so,
How do you
I
identify?
visited Nana, kind of like,
Yeah.
that's not,
It was
I'm not,
I know, right?
I'm not, they kind of like threw a loop on me, so I'm not really, I wasn't really prepared for this panel, I should have been prepared. I didn't even look up Diary of a Madman, like, I know this, how is one of my favorite movies, what,
And I get like.
and I, based on the.
Anya, quick pick first.
Yes.
Before you leave, quick pick.
Yeah, I.
Oh,
only
and then I wanna
don't
talk to you about
look through them.
tomorrow.
Oh, then should I indicate, I got a lot of layers.
I mean,
I listened to their prescription.
Yeah, I remember,
Trying to get pictures of all the panelists, of all the
Can I be
panels.
on the other side?
reading one of the things I did, and other than it being kind of.
Get my better-
It was good, but that was the only time I ever read Russian science fiction.
Thank you.
Okay. I
Is
probably
that-
should
is
have
that-
smiled better. Did I fit on my? Okay.
Was that good for you? Because she came and I was stuck. I didn't know that with the panel was even gonna have it. So I'm hoping that if nothing else that you guys.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. No one else reads, like, that's what I was saying. No one
Nobody
reads
left, so I
interna-
was like, that was good.
Yeah, no one reads international horror, so like, these may be the 5 people I see for the year.
Yeah. So
In person, to like talk about it.
Yeah,
So
well, if you
that's
want to
pretty cool.
talk more to me, we can like hang out and I'll like be a little more lucid later. Today I'm a little bit thrown off of everything, but I'll, yeah.
So there were 2 panels tomorrow that Mueller was supposed to do and he bowed out.
Yeah,
So
I am on the
Anthony-
1 o'clock, I'm on the 1 o'clock panel.
Okay, so Anthony said, and he was kind of confused as to which one you were going to be on.
I'm on 1 o'clock.
So you're going to be on When Monsters Rule the Rex.
I don't know when that was, but you gotta.
That's at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, but when is that? When did Monsters Rule the Rat?
That's at 1 o'clock.
I know, but when did Monsters?
Oh, yeah.
What's the I asked for a description of that panel.
Anthony put this one together, so
I don't even know what I'm supposed to be talking about, so how do I can prep?
He described it to me as when adaptations of monster movies came out in paperback, or in like something like that. That's what but if it's your panel, you can do whatever you want.
Is that my panel? I'm not moderating it, for God's sake.
I can be here for
Well,
you.
Nancy Collins said she would come and do